My name is Deborah Henrie, and this is my reflection video for my educational technology degree. It's a master's degree through Boise State University. This has been an amazing experience for me. When I started the program, I found myself very intimidated by the idea of getting a master's degree. I wasn't sure if I was smart enough, I was not sure I could write well enough, and I was very nervous. My experience has been that through the help of professors and other students in the classes, I have grown and I have found myself making those things that made me nervous and that were hard at first. They've become my strengths in this program. This program has taught me how to use technology successfully in a classroom. I have always loved technology. I've used it, I've integrated it, but it hasn't always been in the most effective way. So this program has taught me how to use technology in an effective way as both an educator and letting my students use technology to help teach me and the rest of the class. This video will take you through all of the courses that I participated in, and I will talk a little bit about the coursework in each of the programs. I'm very excited to be ending this chapter of my life and a little sad as it comes to an end to stop learning with all these wonderful professors and other students that we've had. My goal is to continue learning and to continue finding ways to effectively and purposefully use technology in the classrooms. The wonderful thing about technology is that what's new and great today will be obsolete in just a few years, and so we always get to grow and learn and have professional development and seek to be better and to know more about technology and how to use it in our classrooms. So the first class I took, my introduction into this program, was Ed Tech 501. In this class, I learned how to develop a definition of exactly what educational technology was. And I learned different ways that I could integrate technology, what it would look like in a classroom. I learned about technology use plans and how to make sure that I am effectively planning for technology use in my classroom. And I've also learned how to evaluate schools and learned how to look with a critical eye at how other teachers and how myself use technology in my classroom. One of the activities I did in this class was the Tech Trends lesson plan. This lesson plan consisted of taking mobile devices and having the students take pictures of geometric shapes throughout the building. I actually had an opportunity to use this lesson plan in my classroom, and the kids loved it. They were engaged, they were excited, and they wanted to be involved in that lesson. The kids came back with some amazing presentations about geometry and what they found, and there were some pretty awesome pictures that came back. So this was one of the great takeaways from this class, was using the tech trends, the current things that are out there, the ones that the kids want to do, and employing those into my classroom. Another example of an activity we did in this class was talking about the digital inequality and being in a simulated task force that created solutions for the digital inequality. Teaching in a school that is 64% free and reduced lunch, we have a lot of students who do not have access to technology at home. It's been a fairly big hurdle to overcome in my classroom. When I want to use technology that the students might have to take home, it is not possible for all students. What I found is that everything that I do has to be able to be contained within my class period. If it's not, many of my students can't do anything when they go home. The flip side of that is that more students than you would expect have access to internet some way, through a smartphone, through the library, or through grandparents, friends, cousins, whatever the case may be. However, having access to the internet through a smartphone is not equitable to having access on a computer. They can't do things like create voice threads. They can't go in and access documents as easily. And so it needs to be considered, as a teacher is integrating that technology into their classroom, how they're going to bridge that divide for those students who don't have access to the technology. Another aspect of digital inequality that I have seen is the ability for teachers to effectively use that technology in their classroom. Teachers have this digital divide. There's all these young, fresh, new, wonderful teachers coming in who've grown up with technology and grown up texting. And some of the older teachers struggle with just logging into a computer. And so bridging that digital divide is just as important as helping our students to be able to have that access to internet at home. The activity that we did with our technology evaluation report, we evaluated a school and put together a report. Now, I actually evaluated the school that I worked at. I was the only person in our group who actually worked in a school. So I took the time to evaluate our school and where we were with technology use. And what I found is that a lot of teachers had technology available to them. They just didn't use it. And the other thing I found was that teachers who wanted to use technology didn't have access to the technology like they wanted. And so we had a long ways to go in our school. This was the technology report that we wrote based on that, and it can be found in my website underneath my artifacts. EdTech 502, I also took my first semester, and this was my first introduction to drinking water from a fire hose. It was insane, learning how to read code. However, as I applied myself and I found myself jumping into it, I have found that knowing code has helped me in so many ways. I have been able to develop websites and then tweak it because I know code. So if I don't like exactly how the website looks, I can just go in and manipulate the code and change what I don't like. So I found that being able to read that code helps me when I'm looking at websites to be able to create them and to be able to look at them. I've also been able to create websites for local businesses here in Pocatello who have asked for me to create those websites. And so that has been a really fun experience for me. Several projects were created in this class, everything from a web quest to a virtual field trip. We also created things about acceptable use and etiquette. So a lot of things were learned as we were creating these websites. All of the projects were built around some sort of topic that affected and was important to the field of educational technology. So my project list is here, 502, at the internet and educators. And a link to this can also be found on my website. EdTech 503, this class was instructional design. Now, I'll be totally honest with you, when I first started this class, I felt a lot like I was jumping through hoops. I didn't feel like I needed to sit down and learn how to design a curriculum unit. My heavens, I'm a teacher. I do it all the time. What I found was that I needed a lot of work in how I created my units. Although I've always created objectives and matched them to the standards, and I've done the assessment based on my objectives, never have I actually sat down and went from step A all the way through step Z of creating a unit and following an instructional design model. So I decided to create a unit on chemistry, on mixture solutions, and they then used that unit in my 6th grade with all the teachers at the end of the year as a culminating activity for our chemistry unit. So that was a great experience to actually see several teachers using what I had created and then getting that feedback and being able to hear how they felt like that unit went. So this was the big project that I created. This was the culminating activity and is also found on my website. EdTech 504, Theoretical Foundations of Educational Technology. Again, felt a little like I was jumping through hoops with this one. I've taught for a long time, and so I know all about theories and how to use classroom management and all of that. But what I found was I needed to have a refresher. In this class, I wrote a synthesis paper in which I took stimulus response and constructivism and talked about how they would work in a mathematics classroom. What I found is that as a teacher, I don't feel like you can be all one way or the other. We have to meet in the middle somehow, that we have to find a way to have balance in all things. And so this paper talked about how I found in my classroom the technology, and I explored all through technology we had available at our school, and I looked at technology available online and found that much of our math is stimulus response, and very much dependent on you got the right answer, here's your cookie, and that does not match with the trends that the United States are going with the Common Core standards that most states, including Idaho, have adopted, which is more of a constructivist theory where students are actually creating their learning and understanding of math. So this was a great paper for me. It fit right into what I was doing as a math teacher in my classroom. 505, this was my evaluation class. I learned how to evaluate programs. I went to my district curriculum director when I found out I needed to do an evaluation, and I asked them if there was anything that would be beneficial to them for me to evaluate. I really wanted it to be a meaningful project that had purpose. So I was asked to evaluate Plato Learning Environment. Our school district currently uses that program for credit recovery, and they wanted me to evaluate it for its effectiveness with the Common Core standards. So I chose just math because that was the subject I teach and that I'm an expert in, and began to evaluate Plato Learning and determine whether or not those activities that were already there actually truly met the Common Core standards as Plato Learning claimed they did. It was a great experience for me because what I found was that what they had done is just realigned all their current programs to the new standards, but had not changed them to match the rigor and the depth that the new standards required. So I was able to report back to our district, and they took that report and they used that in consideration of whether or not to adopt Plato Learning. They also took the concerns back to Plato Learning and said these were the concerns of our teachers, and we're able to have a conversation about whether or not Plato Learning was an effective use of our school district money. EdTech 533 was my first elective. This was taken, it's YouTube for Educators, and I wanted to learn more about how to effectively use YouTube in my classroom. It's always fun to pull up a short little video. The kids love it. They think it's great. But I wanted to come back to that whole idea of purposeful technology integration. One thing that I'm really walking away with from this program is technology integration just for the sake of integrating technology is really not using the technology the way we should. That technology integration needs to have a purpose. So I wanted to learn how to create videos that my kids could use, and then also how to use the YouTube videos that were already there in a manner that would be purposeful and effective for my students. One of the takeaways that I had was that I created an interactive video library. This was actually created for an professional development course that my school district was doing on the new Common Core standards for mathematics. And part of those standards is the mathematical practices. So I created an interactive library of all of the standards and what our understanding of those standards were at that time. And we created this interactive video, and I was able to put it together, and we presented it as a group to the other teachers in our district. So this was a lot of fun for me to create. Although now my understanding is different, and I think that it's always changing. And that's what I think that I learned we have to be careful of with YouTube, is that I created this video just 2 years ago, and it's now not necessarily the most accurate video that I would use. I also used the opportunity to create a video on volcanoes. At the time I was teaching science as well as math. And I did this using a green screen. I was able to take video clips from the free public domain files, as well as little pictures and video clips, and I was able to put together a video that talked about volcanoes. This was a lot of fun. It was a challenge. I am not a very big fan of getting in front of a camera and speaking. I find that I always feel like I look silly or that something was just not quite perfect. And so this was a challenge for me. I redid it several times, but I felt like the end product was something that was useful to the students. I showed it to my students in my class, and they all thought it was amazing that their teacher was a superstar and that I was on the internet. So they all went home and showed their parents. And so that was really fun that all of these kids were so excited to just see their teacher in a video. They didn't care that my hair was maybe a little frumpy that day. So that was really fun for me. EdTech 541 was integrating technology into the classroom. This was one of my required classes for the certificate for being an integration specialist. This class was integrating technology into the classroom. What I found with this class is that I had several great fun projects, and again, that I'm going to come back to that purposeful integration of technology. If we're not integrating it with a purpose, we're just using it to use technology to be able to check off a box. I was able to create a series of lesson plans that went with several different subjects and different lesson plans that went with different concepts within math or within other subjects. And I really found this to be helpful to make me focus on, why am I including this technology? Is it really benefiting the learners? Or could I really do the same thing just by standing up in front of the class? So this was a great class for me for applying these. Most of these lessons I actually came back and taught in my classroom or forwarded on to colleagues who taught those subjects and had them teach them in their classrooms. Most of them were fun. The kids liked them, and some of them the kids didn't like and needed to be tweaked. So it was a great experience. I think that just as anything else in teaching, if we're not being reflective on what we're teaching and we're not looking at those lessons and how they worked when we taught them and what we need to do better next time and what needs to change, then we're not learning anything from our experience and we're not the most effective teachers. Reflective teaching is one of the most important practices within teaching. So being able to look at these lesson plans and say, whoa, that one did not work. The kids did not like that lesson. Or looking at it and saying, you know, that was really good, but I need to tweak this. And then actually tweaking it is a huge part of these lesson plans. EdTech 542 was the other requirement for being a technology integration specialist. It was project-based learning. In this class, I created my own website from Google Sites in which I created a unit on ratios and ratio learning for project-based learning. Again, this was a really fun unit for me to put together. The students are actually trying to put together a fundraiser for the local food bank. I was not able to use the entire program. We had to do it as a simulated task. Our local food bank here wasn't able to coordinate with us to be able to actually do a fundraiser. But I did use this unit as a simulated situation for my students in which we created a fundraiser and we talked about what money goes into it and finding those unit rates. And it was a great way for kids to see the importance of ratios and how they used them in their daily life. EdTech 543, Social Network Learning. This class was a great class for me. I learned a lot of things from curating libraries and creating a curated library and vetting materials to using Twitter and Facebook to help me professionally and also for my students. One of the biggest requirements in this class was that a group of 3 of us created a MOOC. Now this MOOC had to be open and available to anybody, and we decided to do it on healthy living. As you can see, the course is a 5-week course that anybody can take on healthy living and nutritious food. EdTech 551, technical and grant writing, I took because I think that as an educational leader, you have to know how to write grants. If you don't know how to write grants, you're not going to be an effective educational leader. Most positions that I had been looking at all required the ability to write grants. So I took this class as a way to boost my understanding and my ability to write those grants. My grant that I wrote was for iPad minis. It was for a classroom set. I have not been able to find a funding source as of this point, but I have continued to look and I've tried to find funding sources. This grant has been a great asset though, because I have been able to use that as a guideline for writing a grant for an interactive classroom. And I was able to get a grant where I got a Promethean board as well as a class set of response clickers. And that's all as a result of what I learned in this grant writing class. And so ends my journey for my master's degree in educational technology with Boise State University. And although this is the end of one journey in my life, the journey continues. Because as I've said before, learning and technology never ends. This is just a jumping point for a new point in my life. So as this road continues to go on around this bend, so will my experiences with technology and integrating them in my classroom. I appreciate all the help that I've received from my professors throughout this program and through Boise State for helping me to be able to live this dream of getting my master's degree.